Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a massive book haul for you. I actually have two time periods that this covers. I have right before Christmas, and right after Christmas, and that usually tends to be a crazy month for me, crazy period. I record my December book haul video usually back in mid-December because I go out of town, and so I can't record stuff around the time that the turn of the month into the new year. However, that meant that all my Christmas books had to go into the January book haul. So usually I try to not just buy and receive, whether it's from a publisher, an author, or from family, within 20 books. Sometimes it goes to 25. Sometimes it goes as high as 30. I usually try to keep myself responsible. I was not so responsible this month. I have a book haul of 49 books. I think that's got to be my biggest book haul. That's got to be my biggest book haul for January, because it is the end of December all the way through January. So it's like a whole, it's a whole month where, oh my goodness, it's so crazy. Now, going through what I have, 21 of the books were either gifted by family for Christmas, gifted by friends, gifted by publishers, or gifted by authors. So I have 21 books that were gifts. And then I have 28 books that I bought. So when you put it in that sense, it's not crazy. It's not as crazy as I thought. But 49 books. I should have gotten one more just to make it 50, and even 50. But yeah, 49 books. Woo boy. So let's get on with it. Let's count. Let's go through all the books that I bought or received. We're going to start with the books that were given to me by a friend. I have a friend. His name's Jerry. I'll just give you his first name. Jerry reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have a bunch of Star Trek books. Do you want any of them?" And so I said, "Sure." And so he showed me the list, and I said, "These are the ones I'm most interested in." And so he sent me 4 books. He sent me the book Battle Stations. These are all old retro Star Trek books. And then he sent me the Star Trek book Demons by J.M. Dillard. By the way, Battle Stations by Diane Carey, Demons by J.M. Dillard. He sent me The Romulan Way by Diane Duane and Peter Morwood. Again, classic covers. And then he sent me Star Trek The Voyage Home, the novelization. I inadvertently purchased this because I didn't know if or when these books were going to arrive and stuff. So I have 2 copies of this now, but I will probably be selling one of them. But it was very nice of Jerry to send me these. So Jerry, thank you so much for sending me these books. And I still think they're in pretty good condition. So I'm very excited to get to them one day. All right, let's go through some books that my family got me for Christmas. I don't know if anybody else does this. My family, we know what we're getting for Christmas because, literally, my parents or my siblings will literally ask, "What do you want?" We'll tell them exactly for them what I want them to get, and then they usually get. And we are very clear about prices. We know how much. So I know I'm not going to give my parents 10 books when I know they're only going to get 3, and I'm not going to give my brother 3 books on his list when I know he's only going to get 1 or something. So I limit it to what I think they're going to be able to get me. So the books from my parents and from my siblings. My parents got me books 2 and 3 in the Stone and Sky trilogy. You have Stone and Tide and Stone and Ruin by Z.S. Diamante. These are self-published books, part of his Stone and Sky trilogy. I read the first book and I really enjoyed the first book. And I also read the short story collection, but I read the first book and really enjoyed it. So I plan to continue on with this self-published trilogy, classic style fantasy written in the 2020s. So I'm very excited to continue on with this series. So now I have the books to do so. I couldn't continue on until now. For my birthday a month before, I had asked for the second book in the Songs of Chaos series. And for Christmas, I asked for the third book. And the massive Doorstopper style book is Defiant by Michael R. Miller, and I received this. And when I put on Twitter that I'd gotten this, Michael said, "Yeah, don't wear yourself out holding that book because it's a heavy chunker." But this is the third book in the Songs of Chaos. Book 4 is supposed to come out eventually, maybe in 2025. I don't know specifically when. So I have time to catch up on the series. And I read book 1 last year and loved it. I loved it so much. This is such a good series. So I'm really excited to continue on. I have book 2 in paperback. Now I have 3 in hardcover. All right. And the last book that my family gave me, this is a very different type of book, but my family gave me If I Should Die by Keith R. Clemens. Essentially, it's an indie pub book, and this is a religious fiction book, and this is because they know the author, kind of. So they gave me this book. So I will put this on the shelves to be read at some point. And something just fell out of that book. I'll get that later. All right, I'm going to take a break from books that were gifted to me and talk about books that I purchased. I purchased 2 Star Trek books. I purchased the Star Trek book A Stitch in Time, which everyone tells me I should read. Every Star Trek fan is like, why haven't you read Stitch in Time? You talk about liking the DS9 books. You haven't read Stitch in Time. Okay, I got it now. And I hear it's really good. It's actually written by Andrew J. Robinson, who is the actor who plays Garrick. So it's like perfect. So I'm really excited to get to this eventually. And it's a bit longer for a Star Trek book. It's almost 400 pages, which at the time this came out, they didn't do 400-page Star Trek books often. Likewise, there's another longer Star Trek book that I purchased, which was Pathways by Jerry Taylor. And this is written by the co-creator of the Voyager show and the executive producer, Jerry Taylor. And I've read one of her other books that I really liked. I think it was Mosaic. I'll get to this eventually. I'm going to have to put a moratorium on Star Trek books buying just because I have so many to read now. I mean, I do it for every genre, but I really have a lot of Star Trek books to read. And I'm not reading that often. I'm only doing like 1 a month, so I might speed it up to 2 a month at some point again. I had been doing 2 a month for the last couple of years. In 2024, I stopped to 1 a month just so I could get to other genres. But yeah, I'm excited to read those Star Trek books. I also bought some fantasy books. I bought the Durini trilogy by Katherine Kurtz. The first book is Durini Rising, and these have gorgeous cover art by my favorite cover artist, Daryl K. Sweet, who is sadly not with us anymore. And the second book is Durini Checkmate and Note of Caution with an old book. These covers had stickers on the bottom that were from the store that usually peel right off, no problem. It took off the paint, and I'm really sad that it did that. But still, I plan to read the book. These are really short. And then Hi Durini is the third book. And of course, these all have great Daryl K. Sweet paintings. And so I'm very excited to get to this trilogy eventually. It's a nice short and sweet, should be just quick to knock out. And it's part of like an overall Durini saga that Katherine Kurtz has written. And I have a few of the other books, but this is the first trilogy. So I'll try to get that eventually. When it'll be, 2025, 2026, 2027, who knows? I also bought some other media tie-in fiction books. I bought 2 Halo books. I bought the Halo books Ghosts of Onyx by Eric Nyland and Contact Harvest by Joseph Staten. I always want to say Joseph Stalin. No, by Joseph Staten. This is books 4 and 5 in this Halo saga. I've read the first 3, and I particularly like Eric Nyland's work. I haven't read anything by Staten, but I've loved Nyland's work. And so this is his last book, and so I think this is the last book, so I'm going to savor this so much, but I'm so excited to get to this, continue on the Halo saga, and then eventually read Contact Harvest and get to that, which also should be lots of fun. I'm going to run out of space so fast, it's ridiculous. I also bought another fantasy book by Barbara Hambly, Night of the Demon Queen. This is the 3rd book in the Dragonsbane series. I own Dragonsbane and Dragon's Shadow, and so now I have the 3rd book, and I can continue on. I read Dragonsbane and loved it, so I plan to read Dragon's Shadow sometime and Night of the Demon Queen eventually. And these are published by Del Rey, which also the Durini trilogy was published by Del Rey as well. I got an old tour book from one of my favorites, Timothy Zahn. I only got I shouldn't say that. I got 2 Timothy Zahn books this month, but one of them was Night Train to Regal, which is the first book in the Quadrail series. And I did a video recently with a friend, Ian M. Miller, who says that besides the Icarus Saga, the Night Train to Regal series, the Quadrail series, is one of his favorites from Zahn. And so I'm excited to get to this. This is way down the line because I have to buy the other books in the 5-book series. But we'll see when I get to them. But I love Timothy Zahn's writing, so I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I also purchased the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, also known as Blade Runner. It was turned into the Blade Runner movie, but the original novel was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And so I saw that it's by Philip K. Dick, and I saw this at the bookstore for really cheap and thought, you know what? My friend Aaron M. Payne, Bibliotheory, loves this series, loves the movies, loves the books stuff, and he talks about cyberpunk so much. And I just read his cyberpunk book, so I was like, you know what? I'll pick this up and get to it eventually. So that book. I also picked up the 3rd book in Sylvain Neuvel's series, The Themis Files. The 3rd book is Only Human. I have the first 2 books on my shelves. Now I have the 3rd book, and I'll be able to read the trilogy. I was kind of holding off on picking up the first 2 books until I got to the 3rd one, but I have it, so I can eventually put it on my TBR. When you're buying and receiving this many books, when I say put it on my TBR, I don't mean like next month or, this year even. It's probably like 2 or 3 years down the line. So just be patient. I also got some hardcovers. I got John Ringo's Strands of Sorrow, which is part of his Black Tide Rising series. From my understanding, he wrote the first 4 books as a complete arc, and then they wrote some standalones and short story collections afterwards. But I have the first 3 in mass market. Couldn't find the 4th book in mass market, but I want to get to it eventually, and saw the hardcover for a reasonable price. And so I was like, I'll read the 4th book. I don't know how the glare is working there, but yeah. Excited to get to this series. It's a zombie series, and I've read one of the standalones. Amazing. So if these are just half as good, it'll be really entertaining. I bought 1 book for replenishment this year, and that was Angel Mass. I found it in hardcover for a reasonable price, and it's one of my favorite science fiction novels by my favorite science fiction author, Timothy Zahn. I'm collecting a lot of his books in hardcover now, and I still have the mass market that he signed for me, so I'll probably hold on to it. Now I have the hardcover of Angel Mass. So I think that's a gorgeous cover right there. I want to say it's Paul or Stephen Yule. It's Paul Yule. Gorgeous Paul Yule cover art. So yeah, maybe I should reread that because it's been 10 years since I read that book. I also picked up 2 books on the Mike from Mike's Book Reviews read these and recommends them, and I think Patrick Leo's also read them, but I specifically saw Mike's reviews of these last year when he was reading through them, and I just saw them at my local bookstore randomly. I wasn't looking for them. I just happened upon them. I was like, I gotta buy them, and that was Priest of Bones and Priest of Lies by Peter McLean, the first 2 books in the War of the Rose Throne series. This is a 4-book series, so I have the first 2. I will keep a lookout for books 3 and 4. This is from Ace Books. And I know that this is kind of grimdark, which is not usually my jam, but Mike gave such a good review of this series that I think I'll probably enjoy it. So I'm hoping to pick these up eventually. And these are really short books for fantasy, which I like because, boy, I have so many chunkers to read. So it's good to have some short ones. And as I mentioned, they came kindly recommended from Mike, and they were also pretty cheap. So I'm excited to get to these 2 books eventually. I also purchased another book by another favorite author of mine, Delilah Dawson. She writes YA, love it. She writes horror, love it. She writes Star Wars, love it. I didn't love her fantasy, and one of her other horror books I didn't particularly love. But I really enjoy most of what she writes. And so I purchased Midnight at the Houdini, which is her YA book, a YA fantasy book. And I actually don't know much about the book, but it's short, and it's Delilah Dawson, so I'll read it. I really enjoy her work, generally. I think I've read like 10 or 11 books by her, and I've enjoyed like all but 2. So that's a pretty good track record. I also bought 1 comic this month, and that was Star Wars The High Republic Jedi's End, which is the 3rd bind-up of issues for the first phase of the High Republic. I have the first 2 bind-ups, and I have the third one. This is all 3 of the Phase 1 comics. I plan to read these around the time that the final novel by Charles Soule comes out, which is Trials of the Jedi. So, yeah, I hope I enjoy this. I enjoyed a lot of the novels, the adult novels for the High Republic, so we'll see how the comics do. I'm not going to promise to read all the comics for the High Republic, because that'd be insane, and I'm not a masochist. But I will plan to read at least these 3 bind-ups and see what happens. All right, now to the Star Wars books that I purchased this month. I'm getting so close to owning the entire expanded universe. I think I have maybe 10 books left. Maybe. It might even be fewer. I need to recount. But I'm that close to owning every expanded universe adult novel. Because if I went into the kids' books, it'd be insane. So I'm talking about the adult novels. I bought 7 adult novels and then 2 kids' books for Star Wars this month. And found them for reasonable prices. And I'm so excited to get to these and 100% the EU. My hope is to 100% the EU by the end of 2026. It might be 2027. But I purchased the book Cross Current by Paul S. Kemp, which is set very late in the timeline. But Paul Kemp's a pretty good author from what I've read of his. I also purchased Mall Lockdown by Joe Schreiber, which Joe Schreiber, I enjoyed Death Troopers, didn't love it. I plan to read Red Harvest soon, and hopefully I'll enjoy that. And I've heard really good things about Mall Lockdown. I heard it's very intense. So, yeah, I'll read this one. I also purchased Honor Among Thieves by James S.A. Corey. James S.A. Corey, you say? That sounds familiar. Yes, this is the 2 authors, Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham, who wrote the Expanse saga. And one of the few collaborations they've done outside of the Expanse was for Star Wars. They did this novel, which was one of, if not the last Star Wars novel to be published. I think this was the official last one. It might have been Razor's Edge. But anyway, this was right at the end, right in 2014, right before the switch over from Expanded Universe to canon. And so I plan to read this eventually and hopefully enjoy it. Speaking of the end of the Expanded Universe, the end in the timeline, the last book in the timeline for the Expanded Universe is The Crucible. Not The Crucible. Crucible by Troy Denning. Not The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Crucible by Troy Denning. And this is the last one in the timeline. And I hope I enjoy this one. We'll see how I feel. Some people were really let down by the Expanded Universe ending. I thought that the end of the Fate of the Jedi series was great. I thought it was a great ending to the EU, so we'll see if this coda is worth it or not. I'm running out of space. All right. I purchased the last book chronologically and the last one published. I also bought the first original novel published, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I know that the novelization for A New Hope came out before it, but this is the first original book for Star Wars. And I've heard very mixed things about this. And every Alan Dean Foster book that I've read in Star Wars, I've not enjoyed. So we'll see how I feel about this one. So yeah, and has a special introduction from George Lucas. So we'll see how I feel about that. I also purchased Tales from the New Republic, which is a short story collection. It's edited by Peter Schweighofer and Craig Carey, and it includes some short stories by Michael Stackpole and Tim Zahn and a few others. I didn't recognize any of the other authors, but Stackpole and Zahn each wrote 2 short stories, and they turned it into basically like a novella by like making them work together. So that's what most intrigues me about this. But again, I have to get through all the books. I have to read this one. All right, the last adult Star Wars book I purchased was The Clone Wars No Prisoners by Karen Traviss. I'm getting real close to have read all, because I read all of her Republic Commando series and Imperial Commando, that's 5 books, and I read her 3 Legacy of the Force, that's 8, so she has 2 more books, and this is one of them. So I plan to read this, and hopefully I'll enjoy it. And I cannot find this book in mass market anywhere. I usually buy Star Wars. I mean, I have some hardcovers for the EU. Most of my EU books are mass market. Cannot find this book in mass market anywhere. So I was like, you know what? It's in trade paperback. I'll get in trade. So that's No Prisoners. We'll see how this goes. I also purchased some kids' books for Star Wars. I read a few books in the Jedi Apprentice series as a kid and loved them, and so I've been collecting the Jedi Apprentice books. I have The Evil Experiment, and I have The Defenders of the Dead, which are books 5 and 12 in the series. And once I have all of them, I plan to read through these. I'm guessing at the rate I'm collecting these, when I finish the full EU is when I'll probably be able to read these. So these are nice short books. So those will be nice ones to just kind of shove in between some massive books. All right, for some books from Baen that I purchased More Than Honor, which is a novella collection from David Weber, David Drake, and S.M. Sterling, which I'm a fan of the Honor Harrington series, and this is the first, I think it's called the Worlds of Honor series, so yeah, I plan to get to this one eventually, and I really enjoy these authors. All right, I also purchased the book Saving Proxima by Travis S. Taylor, Les Johnson. I'm reading their other books now, their Space Excursion books. Love him, love Les Johnson, interviewed him on the channel, he's great. And I had the second book in this trilogy, which I think is a trilogy, it might be a tetralogy. Anyway, I have the second book in this series that in hardcover, but I didn't have the first book, and so I had to find the first book at a used bookstore, which was very hard to find. But I have it now, so I'll plan to get to this eventually, one day down the road. I also purchased the book The Godel Operation, which again is the first book in this series. It's a sci-fi series. I heard the editor, Tony Weisskopf, pitched this series. I love the premise, but it's really hard to explain. It's a hard sci-fi series that actually has aliens and weird technology, but it's hard sci-fi because of the way it's handled. Anyway, it's a weird premise. But I have the second book that Baen sent me a few months ago, but I didn't have the first, so I couldn't start the series, so I got the first book. Likewise, in that same... I'm just going to have to put them on the floor. I don't have room. In that same vein, I also purchased Monster Hunter Memoirs Grunge. There are 4 memoirs books. 3 that Larry Correia did with John Ringo, and then 1 that he did with Jason Cordova. I read the one he did with Jason Cordova, and I had books 2 and 3 in the ones he did with... I think it's books 2 and 3. I always get it wrong. I had 2 of the 3 in trade paperback that he did with John Ringo, but now I have the first one, which I think is the first one. And so I will plan to read this eventually. I wonder if this even says. It is the first. Haha, I was right. So I'll plan to read this eventually because I enjoy these books, and these are actually pretty shorter than the regular Monster Hunter books. So hopefully this is enjoyable. Oh my goodness, there's still more books, but I'm excited about these. These now for the books that publishers and authors sent me. So for the publisher, if you watch Mike's book reviews, Mike received the same books this month, or actually it was last month, but Baen got the rights to the Pendragon Cycle, which was a self-published series, and it got picked up by the Daily Wire to turn into movies. And Baen picked up a TV show for Daily Wire. And Baen picked up the books to be published for them this year, and so they sent me the mass markets. But because of the way the publishing works, they didn't just get the rights to the mass markets, they also got the rights to the trade paperbacks for the first 3 books. So I have it in mass market and in trade. And I don't know if I think there's 6 books, and books 4 through 6 have not been published by Baen yet. I don't know if they will or how that's going to work. But the first 3 are published by Baen. So they sent me the trade and mass market for those. And those are the books. I'll show you. Also, again, it's Taliesin, Merlin, and Arthur. So I will get to those when I can get to those. I was also sent from Baen Monster Hunter Phantom, which is really interesting because it's part of Larry Correia's Monster Hunter universe, but this book was written in another language. It was written for the Czech Republic, which apparently there's a ton of fans of the Monster Hunter series in the Czech Republic. And then the American fans were like, hey, how come they get special stories? Why don't we get those? So they translated it into English, and so this is... edited by Martin Fajkus and Jacob Marek. Anyway, Larry has 1 story in here, so I'll get to this eventually. It's cool that Baen was able to work that out to get an English printing as well. And now for the books that another author. I had an author, Jason Cordova, who's written for Baen, but he's also written for Chris Kennedy Publishing. And Jason reached out to me and said, can I send you some books? And I said, sure. And he said, no, these aren't coming from a publisher. These are coming from me. So he sent me these, and he sent me 6 books from 2 different series. He sent me 2 books that he's written in the Salvage title universe. You have Salvage Purgatory and Salvage Harbinger, the first 2 books in a new trilogy. The 3rd book, I think, comes out this year, and with gorgeous covers. I want to know who did the covers for these, because I think they're really good. Cover design by DW Creations. I hope that's not AI, but these are gorgeous covers, and I really love them. And I'm reading the Salvage Title Universe books, the first trilogy right now, and I plan to, the next trilogy that I'll read in that universe is probably these ones, unless someone tells me that I shouldn't and should do it in a different order. Jason said I could do these ones next. He also sent me, and I'm really excited to get to these, his original mech science fiction series, which is starts with the book Wraithkin, and then you have the book Darkling, you have the book Death Lords, and you have the book Home Guard. And let me get the name of the series. I think it's called the Kin Wars Saga, or the Kin Wars. Yes, the Kin Wars Saga is what it's called. And this was cover art by Ricky Ryan, which I really like the cover art for these. So, yeah, I'm excited to get to these. This is his own original series that he's written for Chris Kennedy Publishing's, I think it's Theogony Press. And so I'll try to get to this. This is more indie books for me to read. So, continuing my ridiculous book buying and book receiving. It's getting crazy. But thanks for sticking with the whole video. This was a long video, but there's a lot of books to get through. I think I got through them all. Yes, I did. So those are all the books that I bought, received, was gifted in end of December and January. 49 books. Thank you for sticking around. That was a lot. If you are a fan of the channel, let me know what you what books of these you've read, which ones you intend to read, which ones seem interesting. Let me know which authors you're currently reading and all that stuff. Please consider becoming a channel member where you get to see weekly updates every week. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.